I'm Pamela Hawley. I'm the founder and CEO of UniversalGiving. And I think that everyone has a story in life. There's a story as to why you're doing something, or whether it's professionally or on the side. And for me, it's the first time I've ever heard this, Jackie. It was 12 for me too. So we have a bunch of 12-year-old pivotal moments here. I was 12 on, yes, you're Jewish. It's funny. I actually went through my midlife crisis at actually age 24, 12 years later, but I'll talk about that in a moment. But when I was 12, I was on a family vacation in Mexico. And I say this too because I think everyone has a story, and I encourage you to not walk by the story, because sometimes this is a situation that I could have just walked by. But our family's very close. My parents are best friends with a spark. They've been married 50 years. We were, around this marketplace at the silver and the food and all of that. And my dad and I veered down this cul-de-sac. And I come from a really idyllic childhood. I mean, my mom's baking chocolate chip cookies, and it's harmonious, and it's loving, and there's a Labradors in our backyard, all of that. And all of a sudden I see all these begging, starving children, named children, not being washed for a month. Not having legs, I mean, really serious situations, all begging, and their parents lurking in the background. This is where they're getting their funds for the evening, is their kids being out there, begging. And you see that a lot in many countries across the world, a lot in India, and it was tough in Mexico. At that point, I just have the words unacceptable, just flash in my mind. And I came back and started working in East Palo Alto. And at that time, now it's, I think the Four Seasons, but at that time it was Whiskey Gulch. You had really, really tough area down there. It had the #1 highest murder per capita rate there. And we were passing out food and passing out clothing and working with welfare recipients. And after that, I just was like, I've got to figure out how to involve my life in this. But my story was tough because I saw a lot of nonprofits very burnt out, not able to be balanced. It really bothered me, and so I actually ended up going into the for-profit world for a while before starting Universal Giving. But my point is that on that nonprofit side, I just went all over the world. I served in the earthquake crisis in El Salvador, microfinance in remote village 4 hours outside of Bangalore, where there was a suicide rate of farmers, 25% level. It's not abnormal because they're so pained by not being able to provide for their families and the high interest rates, and they're not able to produce on the farms there. We don't really know these things. 25% suicide rate in some of these villages. It's just, we met with the farmers, and it was just devastating. Their eyes so red, just can't even sleep. You're just heart going out for them. Worked with victims of Pol Pot's regime in Cambodia, worked in sustainable farming in Guatemala, and during that time, I had to realize in my story, am I going to be on the road for the rest of my life serving, or am I going to start an organization? I was just presenting back at Duke, and they asked me the definition of social entrepreneurship. I believe you need to be able to have a social mission, be for-profit or non-profit, but then you need to be able to have something that you give away for free. We don't take a cut of the donation. People can give and volunteer. We don't charge you or anything like that. 100% goes direct to the cause. But then you also have to have something where you monetize, and you're not just fundraising all the time. So we set up a program going into companies, helping them with their global corporate social responsibility programs. We help scale their giving and volunteering internationally all over the world. I come from a very strong communications background, and what I saw is here are people reading all these articles, and they read about Sudan and read about Syria, and then they want to get involved in something. So what we pioneered is this concept back in 2006. We said, if you read that, why can't you take action at the end? So we brokered a relationship with Christian Science Monitor. At the end of their People Making a Difference column, you'll see Universal Giving's giving and volunteer vetted opportunities, both in their print magazines as well as online. And so we broker media partnerships like that, going into them where they want vetted opportunities. And so you will see us in newspapers, online, things like that, where we pioneered some of these concepts like community-based journalism, where now people come to Christian Science Monitor, and they can come there and they can say, oh, here's an article, and here are ways to give and volunteer. And the value prop for them is Christian Science Monitor has greater stickiness on their site because people are coming saying, oh, I know I can be educated, I know I can volunteer, I know I can give. So they don't just, they no longer see it just as a news source. So that's just one example of how we creatively market too. When you look at a donation or volunteer experience, we look at the fact that a person volunteers at minimum 2 weeks when they do a volunteer opportunity for us. That volunteer hour is quantified at about $20.33 an hour. When you look at all the volunteers that have come through our site, more than 17,000, that means we've donated more than $31 million worth of volunteer hours, which kind of goes a little bit more to your model of like, what's this impact here that we've done. Having said that, which is great, we equally get donors who are just inspired by the fact of, I've got the heart behind it versus what's the S or a Y. So we're prepared either way. We have fundraising decks that go all about the S or a Y and all about you as if you're a for-profit investor, and fundraising decks that go for investors, and this includes venture capitalists who want to hear all the heart. Like, there are definitely some high net worth donors in Silicon Valley now who've made it big. They just want to like hear the good stories, and they're actually not tracking that much. And then there's other Silicon Valley investors who they're just all about tracking, and then there's a mix. So I think when you're talking about that donor process, you have to be very prepared and be ready for either one, and be ready to switch conversations. When we're in donor meetings or newsletters sometimes go very directly, hey, the reason why you should give is because you get a tax write-off at the end of the year. And then there's other newsletters that come out and say, here is the child. You will be directly being with them. This is important. They are, helping to help, curate cows and help to use that milk to help sell the milk to support their family and make it very heartfelt. You have to be ready at any point to make that donor experience as responsive as possible to your potential donor. I think one of the keys with Universal Giving, we're an online marketplace, and I was a co-founder of Volunteer Match in '96 out of school, and one of the things that we saw then was that people were, going to volunteer centers, and the volunteer center would say, here are 3 options for you to volunteer. But what was so exciting about Volunteer Match was, wow, you could choose all these different opportunities. We're actually seeing a reverse now with Universal Giving, because what's happening is that people have so much choice online now. They're kind of curated. We want something a little bit smaller. We don't want that. We want to know there's 1,000 opportunities out there, but we want you to pick or curate the top 5 to 10 and focus beyond that. Because I don't have a lot of time, and I want to be able to drill down into that. And so, we try to counsel and work with our nonprofits as well on our site too, when we're facilitating this giving and volunteering. I know there's a lot of nonprofits in here. It's essential when you're on the Universal Giving platform how you describe yourself. It will make or break whether people give or volunteer to you or not. What we really believe is the volunteering and giving go together. That's always been my philosophy. When I look at everywhere I volunteered across the world, I gave to almost every one of them, and I thought, what a great channel to facilitate this volunteering into the giving. I had no interest in being just a giving site.